All right, I'm Joe Wellemeyer at Congressman Jim Renacci's office, and today we're interviewing Mr. John Green, a veteran, and today's July 19th, 2017, and we're in Wadsworth, Ohio. So, Mr. Green, let's start off with some biographical details. Where and when were you born?
I was born October 2nd, 1962 in Canton, Ohio.
All righty. And some more biographical. Could you just tell us a little bit about your family, parents, siblings?
Yeah, I was born to older parents, which was, as a child, you don't really know what's going on. They said they had to raise me quick. I had a father born in 1913, and my mother was 36 when I was born. So my mother used to say, I didn't want to have any children. I was having too much fun. But anyway, I was born into kind of the nucleus family. My father, both of my parents are Black Americans. My mother is very fair, as I am. My father, Black American. He came from Native American ancestry. My mother shifted more towards the Italians and the Irish. But our whole history of our family had been integrated. I can trace it back to a great-great-grandmother who was a slave. So my mother grew up kind of highly independent. You got to remember, these were Americans. Today we look at it like, look at our freedoms being taken. Now these people were living under a state of terrorism, right? So when I popped out, I happened to come out at a stage in their lives where they had kind of now become established. So I grew up in a political family. I mean, I was, some people say I was spoiled, but they never spoiled me with any materialism. It was more like, my father was, like, I got in a fight in school, right, one time. And my father said, how big was he? And I pointed down, he was a little littler than me. He told me to go back to the school, listen to me. He told me to go back to the playground, beat him up, and don't come home. You will never embarrass his family being beaten. So there were certain tactics they had to teach little kids. I mean, my dad, I didn't know what was going on. I was 5 years old. I went on my first date. My dad had to find me from kindergarten. I'm over there flirting with some girl. We got blonde hair. Mom's making this corn on the cob. I mean, Black people didn't know whether they were going to live and die. And technically, I was born before the Civil Rights Act, so I was born into slavery. Now, people don't want to consider second-class citizenship slavery, but you don't have second-class citizens anywhere in the world unless you go to India. So we were slaves. And my parents, I grew up through the NAACP. My dad worked in the factory, and I was so bad that in the 4th grade, I was what they would probably call today the Ritalin, ADHD, whatever term. I was the kid that never sat in his seat. I would run around, and they had a machine where you would read, where they would say Jack runs fast, Susie. I would run them, speed up the machine and make all the smart kids like miss it, and I get in trouble. I was always getting spanked. I was cutting school. I would come home and hang out with my dad and be like, no, I don't have to go back. So I was raised like I was just completely out of my mind. So they had a breakdown in the public school system, and the teachers were all crying, and they couldn't put me in jail. I was only like in 5th, 4th, 6th grade. So they put me in a private school called Canton Country Day. And from there, this little wild child that was still wild and hyperactive, by the time I left to go to high school in a public school, I went there and they pulled me in. They said, well, you can't come here. And I said, well, why not? And they said, you've taken all our courses. I was at advanced trigonometry, speaking fluent French. They wanted me as a Rhodes Scholar. My dad wouldn't let me go, So I grew up kind of in a shock, like, what is all this? Where am I going? And, I went on to college, went to Miami of Ohio, got involved in stuff there, and dropped out because my father had passed, and I had been bartending for like 2 years on the street. All I had to do was write these papers. So my grandmother, who was the first black elected official, I think since the Civil War, in Ohio, as a councilwoman, looked like Lena Horne, right? This is middle of segregation. She calls me over and she says, "You're gonna join the Army." And I'm not. Boom, she hits me with this stick. She said, "You're gonna join the Army and your cousin's coming into town." Now, my cousin happened to have been a White House aide under Nixon, right? And was like a colonel at the time in Germany. Now, you gotta remember, I went to Miami, Ohio. I mean, like, we are the most radical, far-reaching thinking people, cocky, you know. I mean, this is the mid-'80s. I weigh like 145 pounds. I think I'm the toughest guy in the world, right? So I go see the recruiters. My cousin talks to him a few minutes, and the guy says, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, who are the toughest guys you got?" And they said, "Well, we got, the Rangers." I hope I'm not getting beyond your questions.
Absolutely not.
So
just keep going.
I said, "Well, I want to be the Green Beret." He said, "You can't be a Green Beret." At that time, he couldn't even listen. He can't be a Green Beret. I said, "Well, who are the second toughest guys you got?" He said, "Well, we got these Rangers." Well, back then, the technology, they had these things called laser discs. So all the recruiters go and sit in a room and they watch the laser disc and watch me, and they bust out laughing afterwards. And they're like, "Look, man, we got 300 jobs. What do you want?" And I said, "I want to do this." Make a long story short, I became an unassigned airborne ranger, right? Went into baptism by fire. All my training over a 2-year period was based strictly out of experiences from Vietnam. But that was my background and how I got jolted into the armed services.
Wow. So you went into the Army, and can you tell us a little bit about how basic training went to start off with?
Oh, yeah. You got to remember now, this. I'm Miami of Ohio, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to the Army, right? Oh, I can handle this. So I'm on the bus, right? I got my duffel bags, I got this plan. So we get ready to get off the bus. I get off the bus. First thing I do is start smiling at the drill sergeant. Like I want to be his buddy. They smoked me for like 8 hours straight. I was the biggest soup sandwich you ever seen in your life. I couldn't do anything right. Couldn't make the bed. Couldn't be up on time. I was physically fit, but I was almost like Forrest Gump. I misinterpreted something. Somebody do like that, I'd run. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. I was like, "Oh my God, what have I got myself into?" I said, "This is insane." I said, "Please, somebody," you keep looking like somebody's gonna come in and wake you up from this thing, and it didn't happen. Afterwards, you're going through the process, and you're looking at the drill sergeants, and this is the kind of leadership that I got. Soldier asked, "Well, do you have any friends, drill sergeant?" He's like, "Hell no, I killed all my friends. I don't have any damn friends." He said, so these guys programmed us. I didn't know anything about programming like I do now. I was just like putty, they loved me, and since I was physically, for some reason, I was so stupid, I was like Forrest Gump, I just couldn't quit. They thought I was a genius, putting a weapon together. You remember that scene?
Yeah.
"Forrest, we never make you a damn general." I was like, "Yeah, no, Sergeant." I didn't know nothing about nothing. And especially how to get along with people. But I was vicious. I had this streak inside me that I think came from my childhood. So leadership came down to this, where I grew up. I grew up fighting. Remember, I'm a light-skinned guy living in a black neighborhood like it's Mayberry RFD. Imagine Mayberry RFD when all these black people, and you get one little black kid that looks white. You're getting, I was fighting from day one. So I was like, let's bring it on. And I was good at fighting. I mean, I didn't care, even though I was soup, I didn't care. So that, they admired that. They didn't care about anything else at that time.
Right.
So,
Wow. So it's pretty chaotic then, basic
insane.
training. Yeah.
It was insane. There was no, today they changed it. I think you have like stress cards, you know, and you have to have some. I know many my drill sergeants were the guys I got were from the 82nd. They had been captured, one of them in Grenada, and killed 2 Soviet colonels and escaped. So I was living with drill sergeants, you know, that it would be nothing to hear them screaming and yelling after work after they stole a truck or something and shooting guns off.
Wow. Yeah. So then, after basic training, I imagine you got more specialized training.
Well, they give you basic AIT,
Ranger.
but the main thing is that you went, at that time, the Ranger regiments had just been created. Now, Ranger regiments were not, they were unknown in the Army. You could not publicize, write about them. In Vietnam, they were known as the Black Berets, okay? So Ranger companies existed throughout American history all the way back prior to the Civil War, right? They were actually the original Ranger regiment in England with Petraeus, I'll tell you later, who had sent me there to train some guys to do the invasion of Iraq. We go all the way back to the 1600s, okay? But due to the terrorist attacks in the mid-1970s, they took as many Rangers as they could and created what they called Delta Force. But there were only 2 regiments that were built, first and then second. Then they built a third one. Well, when I showed up, I was at what they call I was at the 3rd RIP class, meaning a Ranger Indoctrination Program. This was all done by battalions. So the battalions were so isolated that they looked upon this as an infringement of the power of the U.S. government to make 1st and 2nd Rangers actually train together and learn the same stuff. That was a radical concept. And since I was a graduate of that, when I graduated and returned went to 2nd Ranger Battalion, they looked at me like an outcast because I had not gone through their old boy system, which consisted of land navigation, learning the Ranger Creed, things of this nature, another form of programming.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what year was that in?
1986.
Is that when you graduated?
86. Yeah.
When you graduated from Ranger training?
No,
Basic training.
no, that's the indoctrination.
Okay.
Course. Oh, you're gonna love this.
Mm-hmm.
We have these things called cattle cars in the Army. At least they did. So I'm going up to Fort Lewis now. I've been to airborne school, you know, and I went to the RIP program. Airborne school, they're just throwing you out of planes. My first jump was a night jump, and it was behind a colonel named Scott. He wrote some books. But anyway, I'm up at 2nd Bat, getting off the cat, and I'm telling the guys, yeah, we got our berets. They're pinging, right? They're running, they're like, we're gonna die, dude. And I'm like, no, we're Rangers. Now listen, I'm in the Army. I think I'm a Ranger, right? Because I went to RIP, right? I don't have a Ranger tab. I don't even know about the Ranger tab. This is how brilliant I am from Miami. I don't even know what's going on. They're like, they're gonna fucking kill us. So anyway, all of a sudden it stops. And I'm just standing like, no, man, we're Rangers, man. And the window's open, right? And these guys had just came in from the field. And you hear this sound, newbie. And it echoes, newbie. Next thing you know, it goes up, newbies. And it's like a horror show, right? These dudes are throwing bottles out there like, we're gonna fucking kill you. We're like, what is going on? Oh my God. And they bring us in. They tortured us for it went on for me, it was almost a year, but usually it takes about that long. And I mean, I could go into some horrible stuff, but they basically, what the Rangers had to do, they come to a point where the programming that they're doing for you, which is based on the concept of war, And the idea that your ego is broken down, this artificial sense of self, your name, you think you're black, you think you're a black nationalist, which I did. Or it could be a guy in the Klan, which is where I used to work with. A lot of guys in the Klan came. They picked the most radical, far-reaching, insane men they could find with the biggest egos in the world. I mean, I knew guys that, you talk about, now I'm a Christian, but you talk about Jesus freak. These guys would think the guy, I mean, you be talking to a guy like me. I mean, I was baptized Catholic, but I'm walking around talking about God just told me to go sweep the latrine. You got far-reaching egoic sense of self. The Ranger puts you through as much training as possible. They send you to Ranger school for one or two reasons: to get rid of you or to graduate you. In my case, it was to get rid of me, I think. I don't know. I had one guy later that I knew in Delta that said, "No, you can do this," right? At least they made me feel like that. And I get to Ranger school, and I go through it. And back then they had a mountain phase and a desert phase. They have mountains now. We have Benning, mountains, desert, Florida. I got rid of the desert. I was so bad in Ranger school. Oh my God. They had to do a belay test. All you had to do is take the rope and cross it over your chest and say, "I'm on belay." I fell asleep right when the Ranger instructor wasn't looking. He looked out and thought, "Right, Ranger, you're the most messed up. You are a recycle." So they send you back to Fort Benning. They made us run at 2 o'clock in the morning with a telephone pole, dig a hole 6 feet deep, bury it, run back, and then run back and dig it back up. And we had to do that for like 7 days straight, right? We were eating out of garbage cans or anything just to feed ourselves. So when I went back to mountains, something clicked right there. Something snapped, because we had maybe 15 knots in our tests. I was like this. They said a bowling. I was like, bam, bowling, half inch, boom, I'm on it, man. I mean, they're like, "Ranger, you're a mess." I'm like, I'm right at the top, I'm running, I'm doing Australia rappels. I'm like, I'm never going through this. But there was still something wrong with my brain. I buried a Marine one time. I got in a fight in the desert, and I show up, the guy runs out, because each phase, right, you get a peer report. Now, I know I must not be doing too good, because I got recycled, and I don't really know, but one guy runs out, and I could tell he was kind of at the bottom of the food chain. He said, "Green, just tell him you want to go to Florida. That's it." So I go in, and he's saying some stuff, how screwed up I am. I said, "But sir, you need to send me to Florida phase." That's all I said, right? It's the middle of the night. We're in actually what they call, what is it? Not Area 51, but it's Utah, Dugway, right? At the time. So they sent me to Florida. I get to Florida, and they call me in. And I remember I weighed probably about 130 pounds. I was sitting in this big chair. My feet could barely sit the ground. And this captain comes in. He's like, "Are you Green?" And I jump out and say, "Yes, sir." He said, "Put your ass in that chair." He starts talking to me. He said, "My wife." He said, "I want to kill that bitch. And the kids too." He said, "They're driving me crazy." He's looking out the window. He's looking all around. He said, "I don't know what is up with these people. They're just insane. I can't stand being alive anymore," right? He's reaching his desk. I'm thinking, this guy is crazy. He's going to shoot me. And he said, "I'm reading here, in the history of the Ranger School, there has never been a man that has been killed by his own men 3 times. You've been peered out of this course 3 times. Not in the history of the school has anyone ever got to Florida." He said, "I'm going to send you to the best platoon I got." I said, "Yes." He said, "Now get your ass up, get out." I get out of this chair, I start running down the sidewalk. And all of a sudden it hits me. I said, "Oh my God, I said, this is about teamwork. Now, you wouldn't think that that is such a wild understanding, but if you've been a child that grew up in a tumultuous environment and everything is based on race, and your ego and all you've had to do is fight, and you're on your own, and you're gonna die. I mean, my parents had crosses burned on their yard before I was born. You know, this is crazy. They had to steal the land, you know, you got, and all of a sudden it hits you, you say, oh my God. And you've been there. Now listen to this. Not only have you been to a university, studied in Europe, right? You're in the most elite special ops unit in the world, and they can't crack this illusionary sense of self. Brother, when I hit that platoon, and they said, we need a volunteer. Boom, I already had the water. Going on patrol. Boom, I was on patrol. You need help, buddy. You hungry? Boom, here. I ran my patrols in 3 days. I was a go. I was what they call a 3-time go. I was good. I just sat back the last 3 days and relaxed. I thought I was the smartest, most powerful human being that had lost like 35 pounds and couldn't probably stay awake. I mean, we were so impoverished and starving to death. They actually experimented on us with the MREs at that time. They wanted to see how much less food they could give us before we started. Our bodies started dying. So literally, I was biologically like in Auschwitz. But man, don't you think I thought I was just the toughest guy in the world, right? Couldn't open a door by myself without 2 hands. That's how we got it. Wow. But that's what happened to me, and that was my experience from my initial training.
Wow. So then after that, when you went and got assigned to that platoon, is that when you started your...
Well, right. Then what happened, when I returned, there was some problems. You got to remember the Klan and black nationalists made up the most insane egoic system. So when I came back, you still had a lot of guys that were still attached to their egos, even though they became Rangers. They just think, but a lot of Klans guys, you know, taught me about, you know, my own insanity. It's the same. It's all based in racism, whether you're a black nationalist or a Klansman, same thing. So you can look beyond that, and things changed after that. I mean, I started getting in leadership positions. I went to my first sergeant. This was the way they used to do it. They called me in the office. He threw an envelope. He was like, get your weapon, go to the airport, and where did he send me to Boston? And I got ready to ask a question. He's like, did I ask you to ask me any questions? So, you know, I'm carrying an M16 back in 1987 to a civilian airport thinking I'm going to prison, you know. And I mean, I'm hooking up with people and we're doing missions and I'm doing things I really can't speak about. But it made I was what they call a self-starter. You could drop me off anywhere in the world and, you know, I was going to hunt you down and kill you.
Wow. So then, so you served pretty much all over the world.
Yeah, I did 4 years and got out. I actually got out and then went back in.
Okay.
And when I went back in, the Army had changed. That was after Panama.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Wow. So then, is there anywhere you can tell us where you served?
Oh, yeah.
Specifically?
I served. Rapid deployment units were still being evolved. Like Rangers, when I would come home, I mean, I'll tell you how deep it was back then. If I spent anywhere in the United States for more than 24 hours, I had to call law enforcement. That way, if a murder or robbery, anything like that occurred, you know, the odds were that this guy could do it and get away. So we had to, if I was going to be anywhere in the United States, I had to do that. We had a hit from the PLO and the Russian Spetsnaz groups that we were allowed to carry concealed weapon permits. This is a long time before you guys were. But there would be nothing to have Rangers with shotguns going to the movies with their kids. We were strapped all the time. So when I came back in the Army, I went back into the regular Army, but that being the 82nd Airborne. And a lot of the guys, I've been out for a couple of years, they've got a lot of command positions. So like when I came in, the guy actually that was in charge of my RIP class, well, I knew it 2nd Ranger Battalion, was now the Division Sergeant Major, he eventually did become Division Sergeant Major at 82nd. So he sees me, takes me in. So we're going to do invasions of Haiti. I'm working with regular Army. Now we used to be Rangers were very isolated. We were not sent out into the regular Army. We have our own branch in the Army. If you become a Ranger, you don't belong to the regular Army. So anyway, the 82nd, we're going to do that invasion. I worked on that. We didn't actually jump in. Then they sent me over to Korea. And I went into the JSA, which is Joint Security Area. So I used to run missions and tracking the North Korean Special Forces soldiers. They would come down and try to graduate. They'd have to hit a graveyard and use chalk and get back across the north. Well, we had sensors out. So I used to walk to DMZ. And we would try to get them, but we never caught any of them. But yeah, that was wild. Then I worked down in Seoul in an underground facility, which is Tango Security Force, which would be equal to like the old style type NORAD, where the South Korean government will go. So any VIPs, the president would come in, I put it in lockdown and run that type of. So I did a variety of different kinds of stuff, but I went to Hawaii basically to chill out. All the Rangers were chilling in the late 90s. We only worked 3 days a week. All the Rangers were in Hawaii. You know, I'm partying with SEAL Team 5. I'm from Canton. I'm loving it. I'm like, man, I'm living in Hawaii. I'm just loving it. And all of a sudden, we get these orders to go to Kentucky. That didn't go over so well. There are a lot of Rangers that became, you know, these guys are from California, man. That southern environment, we didn't miss. So the Rangers invaded. We didn't know Petraeus had gone there. All the Rangers across the United States were being picked for different positions. And then I got picked to go take, oh, you don't love it. They still talk about your ego, right? I show up at the 101st. Now I'm from Hawaii, you know, now I'm highly sophisticated. Right? I'm dealing with some backward. You always knew different parts of the country offer different things to different people, whatever. But you know, if you get a guy in your office, or you get somebody that shows up, like we're in Hawaii, we always knew the guys from Kentucky because they were always bigots, right? And we were like, where does this come from? Why is that? Well, we always figured because they were in Kentucky. You know, there was nothing there. It's just, you know, you look at the map, it's like there's nowhere to go, right? You're just mad you're there. Well, we get there, and it's a whole new lifestyle. I mean, these people are actually happy to be mad and angry. I'm like, fuck this. So, anyway, Petraeus, I show up, and these colonels and guys had already set me up, and they were like, oh, it's because I was getting recruited, you know, I had a reputation. I used to want to run a war room in Hawaii with a guy named Kip Ward, who was the first black war fighter since Roscoe Robinson. The guys that ran the Afghan invasion, all of them came out of Hawaii, out of a war room that I ran in a basement, in a safe, just like the whole Mission Impossible shit.
Wow.
That's what I used to do, right? So I show up. Now, you know I'm a snob, right? Paid my dues. Seen, you know, mid-level management. Sergeant Major sees me say, oh, Green, they're going to love you. Because I had all kind of people trying to recruit me to go. They're going to love you. I said, they are? They said, oh, yeah. Oh, they're going to love you. You're going to be the best they ever had. I said, yeah. I show up. Listen, man. I show up, right? Now, the motif is more like a garage where people had put stuff together. It's nothing pretty. It's all dirty and ugly. Get this platoon. Every one of these dudes, the day I show up, I got 2 MPs dropping one off in handcuffs. They're drug addicts. The families are mad. I got wives, you know, throwing stuff in the parking lot, screaming at their life. I'm like, this is a madhouse. I'm like, what did you guys do in the Army? So I have to go back to those old drill sergeants, right, from basic training, and instill an insanity that really has to motivate the person to actually do it, not only, but more or less to do it for me, because they didn't give a damn about their country. So I had to teach them ethics, morals and ethics, and then, cater to their ego, listen to all the guys working for me, these long stories about what they can't do. I got to go through this every day. I got to go, I got to break all these guys down. We got so good, Petraeus sent us to England to serve with the original Ranger Regiment from England in English uniforms.
Wow.
With their weapons.
Wow.
So when we do the invasion, right, MSNBC is there. They grabbed me. So the first 3 days of the war, they followed me on NBC News. Right, but that day we were going in, they switched us. We were in American uniforms, but technically, I don't know what they had planned. But these guys were so good that by the time we got through with the invasion, the war was over in 70 days. And I was a platoon sergeant. I broke contact with the 101st. I was off the map. I was with the Armored Division. Everybody said, war's over, we're going home. And we all thought we were going to leave, and we didn't. But while I was over there, we killed, later then afterwards, they moved me up to Mosul, and the 101st went up there, and so we ran Mosul, and we caught the Secretary of Defense. We called him the fat bastard. We killed both of Saddam's sons, and I got Chemical Ali. So we did hit some on some of the high value targets, but it was challenging because soldiers, we weren't prepared for handing out gasoline and civilized, at least I wasn't. And so that was basically my major contribution.
And that was during the Iraq War?
That's the invasion.
Wow. So then after that, is that when you got out of the Army?
No, actually, I was in the Army. I was going through a divorce. I wanted to go back. They were like, you can't go back. I said, why? The sergeant major, the division sergeant major is a friend of mine. He's like, John, you'll go to prison. He said, the stuff you did, they said they got rules of engagement. So what they did was they made me a Ranger instructor. And I didn't want to do it. My mother was a social worker, right? And I called her and I said, you know what? I started having what you would see in the movies, like the guys like, man, I don't want to teach guys how to do this, right? And she made a hell of a point. She said, well, who better to teach them than you? They're going to go anyway. So that's the only reason why I did it. And I was so good. I was so good, brother. And the 101st, we beat out all the Ranger battalions in our graduation. It had never been done, brother. But all we did, because the guys I worked with, they were all, one guy was from 2nd Bat. We just stole all the stuff from the Ranger battalion and taught it to the 101st, and we got all the props for it. But by the time they got to Ranger school, they already knew. But I had most of it was psychological in nature. You got to remember, I'm dealing with cocky guys.
Yeah.
I make a man cry in a heartbeat, just talking to him. So there were a lot of bizarre things I had to work with, but I had a good experience. I taught there, and then the NCO Academy hired me, and so I taught at the NCO Academy. And then my mother got ill. I came back home for a couple of years, and then went back, and then I finally retired.
And what year was that in?
2010.
Okay.
Actually, 31 December 2009.
Cool. And then so, how did you readjust to being out of the Army?
It was challenging. It was very challenging. I was offered a job to go to Afghanistan for Blackwater for $20,000 a month, and so I was going to do that. And that didn't work out. Blackwater was under investigation, so I was like, damn, man. So I'm stuck in Canton, and my mother's ill. She's like, she was probably 83 at the time. And I can't understand Now you got to remember, I'm still somewhat programmed here. I end up now kind of just winging it, and I'm going with the. All of a sudden, I'm picking up on natural occurrences, what people would say, having a relationship with something greater than yourself. Mm-hmm. So I had to put a plan of action in. Now, Obama became president, right? And this had a strange effect on Black Americans. And I'll tell you, because the first time it happened, I went into a colonel's office. I'll be honest with you. He got elected. I went in and I was like, hey, now he's going to do more than just, take the job, right? We're going to get something out of this, man. We've been, we had people fight. Well, no, John. I said, well, what are you talking about? I said, what is this? I mean, I was hot. Call home, everybody's crying, everybody's happy. Obama's president. I'm like, this is the biggest con in the world. So for 8 years, I have to give blind faith to this. Now, there's a school called Sears School. Just real quick, I want to tell you about this. Mm-hmm. This guy gets shot down in Vietnam, right? And they liberate the camp about 7 years later. During this time, this guy is riding a tricycle in the mud, singing a song, and the North Vietnamese and the Americans are picking on him. He gets off this plane, once it's liberated. CIA is looking at him. He's standing on the plane. He's blinking. So CIA say, reverse that. Let's look at that again. He said he's spelling out torture in Morse code. So they put him in a room. And he said, can you tell us anything about the camp you were in or what happened? He said, I really can't. I tell you what, though, I can sing you a song. He sings this song. He knows every soldier from every hometown, their name, their social security number, what day they arrived, what day they died, what day they or snuck out or whatever. This guy created a Sears School, escape and evasion school, right? So I realized that I'm in an insane environment. I got a whole culture of people programmed to believe that this illusion should be worshipped simply because of the way it looks. So I got to ride a tricycle. So I ride this tricycle up until November. And the night Trump ran, I got on Facebook. I said, he's going to kick her ass. And they went crazy. I came from a family. Now listen, Black Americans were all Republicans. My grandmother, who I mentioned, she had to get Black people to vote Democrat during the Depression for the jobs. The Democrats were the Klan. Black people didn't vote Democrat. So I went ballistic. You can imagine what they want to do to me. I mean, those witches in Salem ain't got nothing on me. These cats lost their minds. They went, all those pictures you see with them screaming and the snowflakes. I've got friends of mine still to this day that are having mental breakdowns over this, right? So I had met Jim, the Congressman, Jim Renacci, and I was fortunate enough to meet him, and I could go into that later, but that was a turn of events. But I gradually realized that, and especially this narrative, this is another thing too. When I got out, Rangers looked at my medical records. They're like, man, you did Delta 36, man. You got 90% disability and blah, blah, blah. You need to fill this out. And I said, look, man, I'm not sick. I'm not taking that dope. And there's not a damn thing wrong with me. So Mattis comes out, General Mattis comes out with post-traumatic growth. A whole new narrative, which is what I had to be silent about. I'm a Ranger, dude. I mean, I ended up working with the world champion in martial science, Sogobu Jiu-Jitsu, right, from Japan. This guy puts me through stuff where I'm training with 9-time world champions. I'm a sensei now. I program you. I code you, right? This is what I can do, right? And I'm saying to myself, why have I even experiencing this? Well, had I not gone through this whole process and suffered under the sick administration, right, with these racist Klansmen, whether they be Democrats or, that's why you couldn't pass a health bill, because he got, well, what did the Democrats do? They get all the liberals, right? All the white liberals run to the Democratic Party. Well, there's still some Klansmen up in there. Well, the Republicans were like, shit, we ain't gonna help no niggas do shit. Fuck it. So they invade the Republican Party. Trump comes along as the integrated white man, just screwed the whole thing up. Screwed the whole thing up. Now the Klan don't have an enemy no more. Now you're in a Ranger battalion, right? You're a Ranger. The guy don't care what color you are. He just wants to know if you can do the job. It just screwed America completely up. So I feel like all this suffering that I've been going through and having to readjust, my mother getting ill, and never finding my right niche. I got a degree from Japan. Hell, I got in a car. I can barely even write. I can't even write Japanese. I'm a fighter. I mean, who's going to hire me, But I can teach anybody martial science, program your mind. I mean, it wouldn't be now until, like Mattis is saying, that now we can use you because all veterans have been categorized as sick. Mattis is like, look at Green. Green goes through all this, and you're not going to pay him? We were going to give him 20 grand. I know damn well you can give him like 6, 7 a month, something. Do something with him. This guy's stronger than he's ever been before. So changing the narrative of the American veteran has to be done. And it has to also be done like this. Calling me a veteran is like looking at all the black people in the world and saying, they're Negroes. Well, you know what? You got all kind of human beings wrapped up into this. So for someone to say, well, you're a veteran. Yeah, I'm a veteran. That's true. I appreciate it. But do you know that there's a difference between me and a truck driver? Like, I'm an expert in leadership. Like, I can take 100 people that want to kill themselves, go out there, prove to them, any man out there, that I can whip his ass, and take control of all of you and make you do what I want you to do to live, and you will follow me. Now, I can do that in war. If you taught me the banking system, I could do it in a bank. It doesn't make any difference. I can do it as a race car driver. Ranger school is a leadership school. That's all it is. It doesn't, just because they made you jump out of airplanes and shoot people has nothing to do with the overall concept of teamwork, working together, looking beyond the illusionary sense of self, what you were programmed with, and to look at the person next to you as being a reason and a higher purpose why you're giving up your life and things like that.
Wow. That's a really great experience. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you might want to comment on?
I just think what you're doing is awesome. If anything would ever happen to me, the fact that some American somewhere, some kid will be able to look at this and say, well, maybe I never met an airborne ranger, but it might be something I may want to do one day.
Wow.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in and sharing your story with us, and thank you for your service.
Thanks.